Last time I was talking about why we discipline. Today I'd like to talk about how and when and how we discipline. So if we discipline too much, we can end up becoming a bit of a nag, and it's all about the discipline, that the whole family dynamic becomes about discipline. And this can also lead to a child becoming demoralised, that everything is confined and restricted and acted upon. So we have to think, well then how often do we discipline, and how often and how do we do it? Well, if you look at a child who is whether they're 3 years old or 6 years old, they've got an easy temperament or a difficult temperament, whatever, they're going to have a spread of behaviours that basically ends up being much the same pattern for everybody. That you have the above average behaviours and the below average behaviours happening just slightly above and slightly below average, happening more commonly. And you're going to have behaviours that are very much above average, really wanted behaviours, or really unwanted behaviours happening less commonly. So you get basically a bell curve or a spread of behaviours. Now, if you want to divide that bell curve up into 4 sections, say the bottom 10%, the next 40%, the next 40%, and the top 10%. Each of our responses to each of those sections is going to be different. Let's just look at the middle two first, a bit above average and the bit below average for that child at that age. If we take the bit above average, that this is what we pay attention to. Remember, what do children want most? They want the attention of the people who give them strength, the attention and approval of the people who give them strength, their parents, hopefully. So that's where we provide our attention. We notice. We go, yep, I noticed that, and I'm letting you know I noticed. And then you take the little bit below average, and we withdraw that thing that they really want, their parents' attention. So we turn away. We say, no, okay, I'm not taking notice of that. I'm not reacting to it. I'm bored by it. So if you think about that, we've already got 80% of the behaviours that our child present to us covered. We're either providing attention for what we want, and we're withdrawing attention for what we don't want. So it's pretty simple. And this makes our job a lot easier. That all of a sudden we don't have to get all hot and bothered under the collar so often. Now let's talk about that top 10% next, the really wanted behaviours. Well, that's where we're coming in with our praise that we talked about previously. That's where it doesn't happen very often, but we're really going to notice it, and we're really going to describe it and pay a lot of attention to that. And then we talk about the bottom 10%, and this is where this consequences come in. So how are we going to handle that bottom 10%? Well, first of all, we're going to keep it slow and keep it calm and keep it unemotional, because it's really easy to let this get away from you and to sort of get very heated and tense. So try and slow down. If necessary, step back or even step out. Give yourself a timeout so that you can do your response to this unwanted behaviour in a controlled fashion. And also, before all of this, hopefully we've done some preparation. Now, the first thing we do to prepare for discipline is to get mum and dad or whoever's the carers for this child together and talking, so that they're both on the same page. This is a political party and no one crosses the floor in front of the child. That we have to have agreement first. With that agreement, hopefully, we are then able to then approach the child and say, okay, let's sit down and talk about this. We want to talk about what happens, say for example, when you're violent, when you hit somebody, whether it be your sister or me or mum, whoever it is. We're going to call that being violent, and this is what we think is the appropriate consequence for that behaviour. Then you can get the child, if they're old enough, you can get the child to have input at that point. Say, well, this is what we think. What do you think? Do you agree? And negotiate that at that point. So if you can get child agreement on that before anything happens, then they own it. They've got buy-in. So they partially own it at least. So that means it's going to be more about the rule rather than about mum and dad. So this can lead to a set of family rules. Now, we don't want to do it too much. We don't want to have like, you know, a 20-page document of family rules, and because that can lead to discipline being too dominant in a family setting, that it can be stifling, and it can actually even lead to sort of a restriction of innovation and can stifle the development of self-belief. So we do need to have a set of rules as children emerge into those primary school years in particular, but we don't want to overdo it as well. So also the other thing is, even though we want children to have an input, it's not a democracy. Parents in a family need to show leadership, just like teachers in a classroom need to show leadership. That there is naturally a power imbalance, because we are a guide, we are teaching, so we have to have that leadership role. So while they have a say, it is still not actually a democracy. So then we end up with these rules, and hopefully these rules should be continuing to evolve. We should continue to sit down and talk about them and reflect upon them and maybe modify them over time. Everyone should be aware of them. Everyone should understand that this behaviour equals this particular outcome, and if that is the case, then it's much more likely that it's going to lead to effective discipline.